When you try to understand the world, one of the first things you'll see is that there are many structures of control that keep almost everyone in check and keep almost everyone repressed to some degree. And when people finally understand some of these structures of control, the first reaction is that they get very frustrated, and some people stay with that frustration for their entire lives. They just run around complaining about the system being fixed against them, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Personal freedom is something that only you are responsible for. And if you ever stop working for it, you'll lose it.
A simple perversion of language has made it possible to convince people around the world that these alternative laws apply to them. One of the predominant beliefs in modern culture is that licenses, permits, registrations, and other forms of documentation are required to operate motor vehicles, use public roads, build structures and establishments, engage in free enterprise, and much more. Sadly, these beliefs are based on little to no investigation whatsoever, and are false. This belief structure is perpetuated by maritime admiralty law. This form of law was originally created to govern ships docking in foreign nations for the import or export of products and resources. It deals with banking and merchant affairs, not civil affairs. When a product is taken off of a ship and brought into a foreign land, that nation takes custody of the resource and accounts for it with a certificate. That certificate marks the birth date of that product in the custody of the respective nation. Think of why it is supposedly required to have a certificate of live birth in the first place. The Barron's Dictionary of Banking Terms defines a certificate as a paper establishing an ownership claim. So right there, we notice that everyone with a birth certificate is defined as being owned. People are used as collateral with other nations because the U.S. is bankrupt. The United States declared bankruptcy on March 9th of 1933. At this point, the U.S. began taking out loans from a private, non-government affiliated corporation called the Federal Reserve. With no money to pay back the loans, the United States began using the citizens as collateral. All birth and marriage certificates are literally warehouse receipts. Just look at the similarities of warehouse receipts and birth certificates. Both document the date of issue, a serial number, registration number or receipt number, a description of the product, and an authorized informant to notify the appropriate government agency. With all of this information being readily available, the majority of people are unaware of their involvement with maritime admiralty law. This is possible through the manipulation of language. This admiralty law changed the meaning of the word person from a natural living person to a corporation. Driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, auto insurance forms, building permits, gun permits, work permits, tax filing documents, birth and death certificates, traffic citations, and many other forms of documentation that were once believed to be absolutely necessary only apply to persons or corporations. Upon signing such a legal document, you are indirectly waiving your rights under the Constitution and lowering your status to that of a corporation that is created with the same exact name as you. The only way to reconcile your true name from the name of the corporation is to take notice that the corporation has its name in all capital letters. This is known as capitis diminutia maxima.
OPEC didn't like what we were doing in Israel. Same old story. And so they cut off our oil supplies. So some of you will remember these long lines at the gas stations. And we feared we were going to have another depression like the 1929 depression. And so the U.S. Treasury Department came to me and other economic hitmen and said, listen, you know, we can't allow OPEC to blackmail us anymore. You guys got to come up with a plan so this will never happen again. We knew that that plan had to involve Saudi Arabia because it had more oil than anybody else. The deal we finally struck with the House of Saud was a deal whereby they would return almost all the money they made from selling oil to the United States invested in U.S. government securities. the U.S. Treasury Department would use the interest from those securities, which over the years has amounted to trillions of dollars, to hire U.S. companies to westernize Saudi Arabia, build petrochemical complexes, desalinization plants, whole cities out of the desert, McDonald's and all the other things that go along with our Western culture. The House of Saud would also agree to keep the price of oil within limits acceptable to the oil companies, possibly not acceptable to you and me, but acceptable to the oil companies. And this is very, very important. They agree that they would never, ever sell oil for anything other than US dollars. It was an amazing deal, the deal of the century. It was history-making, incredibly powerful deal that we struck with Saudi Arabia.
Modern Western civilization, and I have studied it for a long time, is an amazing phenomenon in history. It is unique. No civilization in history ever was like this. It is the first time in history that a civilization has emerged like this. For example, it is the first civilization in history which has been able to acquire that power to dominate the whole world in such a way that the entire rest of the world combined cannot threaten its power. That never happened before in history. Where did they get that power from? They got it from an amazing scientific and technological revolution, which is still unfolding. Many more amazing things to come that will dazzle you. And the emergence of this modern scientific and technological revolution cannot be explained from the analysis of historical phenomena. No, it is an absolutely unique event in human history. Modern Western civilization uses that unprecedented power to oppress. It is one of the greatest oppressors that history has ever seen. Modern Western civilization is also decadent to its very core. It is a civilization that is rotting at its very core, while yet at its periphery it glitters like gold. Modern Western civilization, which has this awesome and unprecedented power, which is oppressing mankind. Modern Western civilization, which is also decadent to its very core, also is a civilization with amazing powers of deception. Appearance and reality are always different from each other in all that pertains to this civilization.
legitimate, the true Messiah, he'll have to rule the world. That's where we're heading. He will have to rule the world from Jerusalem. By my calculation, he's now so close that children now at school should live to see Dajjal ruling the world from Jerusalem.